talk a little bit about CSS styles and CSS style sheets. And I made a few tutorials. So let's talk a little bit about what they are. Well, the first thing, CSS styles are actually rules that you can put into an HTML page or include on a separate style sheet page that talks about the specific design or specifies the design aspects of your web page, such as the color of the font, the structure, where different information is going to be located on the page, etc. And the idea of a style sheet is that the HTML page will serve as the data to specify the data or information that's going to be in your web page, and then the style sheet will specify how that information will be displayed. And the reason why that's so powerful is that you can separate the two so that I can have the information in the HTML page could always be there, always be the same. And then the style, I could change one little thing in the style sheet, and that style sheet, which may be linked to many different pages, would then update all those pages so they're all displayed differently. You can even specify that whenever this page is displayed on a cell phone, for example, then use a different style sheet, and then that style sheet could be hooked to all kinds of pages on your site, so that whenever it detects it's on a cell phone, then it displays the text differently, etc. So one of the fundamental things about a style sheet is that it allows you to separate the data or the information from the display of the page or the style. Okay, well, let me talk a little bit about syntax, and as we'll learn, Dreamweaver write a lot of this for you, but it's very helpful if you know something about CSS. Well, this is your basic CSS style here, and the first thing is there is a selector, and the notion with the selector is that this is a paragraph tag, and it says then that anything that has a paragraph tag around it in your HTML page will have the color of red. The color is this property, and then red is the value of that property. And so this is how a little style one selector on your style sheet, the syntax, works. Now there's different types. In this case, the selector says, well, there's an HTML tag, and whenever that tag appears, do stuff to the sheet. Well, the second thing you can do is you can also create your own class, and you can call it whatever you want, and it has to start with a dot, and you can put that class in different contexts, and I'll show you an example. And you just say whenever this class exists. So instead of saying if you see this HTML tag, do something, now it says whenever something is labeled with this class, well, then do something to it. Put it in a certain place, or make it a certain color, do some stylistic thing. An ID is the exact same thing. The only difference is an ID starts with a pound sign like this, and the other thing about the ID is you can only have one ID per page. The class may be something like important stuff, and important stuff may happen several times on the page. So class and ID, both those are just cases where you create your own selector and you apply it to different things. And I'm going to show you a simple example here. So if we look at this page, we have defined these different selectors, and this is for a header, and I said the headers will be red and bold because I defined H1s to be red and bold. And then this has been formatted, assigned to a P tag, so that means the P tag looks this way. But let's look then at the actual source. This is one thing you can always do on web pages. You can say view page source. So now we can look at the HTML, and so here's what I did. If we look at this, and what I did was I just put the styles, this is how you put the styles in the page itself rather than linking to a style sheet. So here I define the styles for a tag. So I said the color would be red for H1, which is an HTML tag, and in fact we saw that on the page. Header is red and the font style is italic. And then I used an ID. I call this ID just my ID for want of something else. And I said whenever there's a my ID, the color will be green and the font weight bold. So down here in the HTML, I defined a division which just means this part of the page. And I said for this division, which is this text here, and there's the end of the division, it should have these characteristics of my ID, which is color green, font weight bold. So if we look at this text has been formatted, we look at that text here, sure enough it's green and the font weight is bold. Then I went on to define a class, and I made the class blue, font size larger. And so here I made a class, and I wrote this text and I put it inside a p tag. So I put p class equals my class, and then that text is all blue. So that gives you some basic idea about the syntax of CSS.